there
So
you go.
we're experimenting with a little segment where our listeners will get a chance to get to know you a little bit better. And because you're a musician, I want to make sure that everybody gets to know your musical tastes. I just switched from Spotify to Apple Music. Been a Spotify guy for a long time. And now I have to go back and recreate all of these playlists. So I have to go back and think, well, who are some of my favorite all-time musicians? So I'm calling this segment the High Five. This is like David Letterman style, counting down from number 5 to number 1, your top 5 musicians of all time. Now, I had to think about this before we started this interview, Kenny. And I had to think, if I were to list my top 5 musicians of all time, who would they be? I'm going to tell you my top 5, and then I want you to tell me what your top 5 musicians of all time are. Okay, so number 5 on my list, without a question, is Keni Thomas. He's got to be up there as number 5. Hey, you made the list, man. Good job.
You know what, Jeff? That just shows good taste.
Yes, that's right. Just great musical taste, right?
There you go.
And right behind, or just so that you know, you're number 5, so you made the list, but you just come in right behind one of my favorite blues guitarists of all time, a guy by the name of Stevie Ray Vaughan. So you're just neck and neck behind him. Yeah. But when I start thinking about who
he's a little bit better guitar player than I am. Just a little.
So I think, okay, so who would be number 3 on this list? And I'm trying to think of a guy whose musical taste could unite the world, and it's got to be Ted Theodore Logan. Nobody can play like Ted from Bill and Ted. All right, so I'm a fan of classical music. I love me some George Gershwin.
Didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Gotta admit.
Gershwin can just hit a note and he's got you from the first note, especially Rhapsody in Blue. But now I get to number 1 on my list, and man, I really struggled with this one. I'm thinking it's got to be the Beatles, right? Wait, if it's not the Beatles, then maybe it's Johann Sebastian Bach, just because his music has been around for centuries. Wait, who else could hold their own with the Beatles and Johann Sebastian Bach? Well, of course, Britney Spears. But no, none of those fit. So for me, number 1 on the list of top 5 musicians of all time is Otis Redding. A guy who can sit on the dock of the bay and with one word hold you in the palm of his hand to the last note of the song. Otis is my number 1 in my high 5. How about you, Kenny? What's your high 5, top 5 musicians of all time?
Otis Redding. That's a good one. Yeah. Mine's easy because I've been asked this question a bunch, and I kind of already know. So the top 5, I grew up in Gainesville, Florida, and Tom Petty was one of the first people I actually got to see live. And I saw him at this little club because, you know, back then the drinking age in Gainesville was 19. And so you could look 12 and walk into a bar and they didn't care back then. So I went in this place, there was this club that the Stray Cats were playing, and he jumped up on the stage with them.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, you know, I think I was like 17, 16, and he just kind of owned the stage. He did a couple cover songs with them, and I went, I want to be like that guy. And then he got big, and the way that he tells stories and very simple songs, but the simplicity of it's genius. The Eagles would be the second one because of their harmonies. It would just always seem like that's the way a band should sound. So Tom Petty, the Eagles. Then musically, I learned to play the piano there was an Elton John book that was sitting there at the sorority that I was working at in college. And I could play a little bit of piano for that, but I didn't really. So I found this Elton John book and just started learning all of his songs. And they're so ridiculously complicated in the chord progressions. And so I became a fan of how he musically moves music. And then in the first song that I ever sang in church, I had a choir director call me up and she said, "Hey, Kenny," I was in high school, I had a band, and she's like, "Hey, we got this band, a bunch of kids and we heard that, you know, you do singing, and we'd like you to come sing at Trinity." And I don't really sing in church. It was one of the very first albums. The second album I ever owned was Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. And when you're a kid, you just play the album. So for those of you who don't know, an album is shaped like a CD and it has music on both sides. So you could flip it over and you would put a little needle on it and it would play. And I had a record player in my room. And I just sit there and listen to Stevie Wonder over and over and over again. And so that's the four. And then the fifth one is my choir director. And she really wasn't, I'd say more like the band leader. She was the youth counselor, band leader, and her job was just to get kids in. Long before bands were accepted in a church, Jeff, she was doing it.
Really?
And it was really just to get kids into the church and get them involved. And her name was Rebecca Brown. And she taught me everything I know about musical theory and how to put songs together. And what it did is it gave me that purpose that music, when they hand you the microphone, you can sing songs like Mexico and have fun, but at some point you need to be able to sing songs with purpose. Yeah. And we were picking stuff off the radio because they didn't have Christian radio at the time. You know, Amy Grant was your only choice. And so we were doing things like On the Turning Away by Pink Floyd, or, Mike and the Mechanics. And what was that? Every generation blames the one before. And we're just doing popular songs that meant something. Yeah. So that kind of sowed that seed for the songs that I like.
Awesome. Hey, let me go back.
Long explanation for five artists.
Let's go back to number 3 because I think I missed it. There was a little internet hiccup. Tell me number 3 on your list.
So I said Tom Petty, Jackson Brown. There was.
You said the Eagles, then Jackson Brown.
Correct.
All right.
Eagles,
Stevie Wonder.
Well, Jackson Brown and Elton John were the two. So Jackson Brown was. I wanted to sing like him, but there was an Elton John songbook in the sorority where I worked, and I learned to play piano by just looking. I can't read music. I still can't read music. And I sat and looked at these chords and went, okay, I know how the song goes. And so that's how I learned. That's how I became a piano songwriter, was because of those two.
Yeah. I can't let this go. You said it twice now. You worked at a sorority while you were in college.
Hell yeah.
You gotta tell me how that went.
Well, here's what I tell people. You got disenchanted very quickly with 120 girls eating lunch and dinner every day. So
awesome.
That was the sororities all had bus boys. So the beauty of it is you came and you could have lunch. You got to eat lunch, and then you would, you'd clean up and serve the dinners. And it wasn't as great as it sounded.
I get it. Sure. All right. So now we're going to get into some of the heart of what it took for you to become a musician. And I said during the intro, if you didn't recognize this, Keni and I spent some time together in the Army. I love this guy like a brother. And I'll never forget running around the airfield on Fort Benning, Georgia with him while he's singing Army cadence, but he's not singing the standard Army cadence. This guy's singing Johnny Be Good. And I'm like, who on earth can pull off Chuck Berry in Army cadence style? So Keni, I gotta tell you, the listeners, how does it go from Johnny Be Good cadence in the Army to singing with some of the biggest names in Nashville music? Kind of explain how this thing went from the Army to Nashville.
Yeah, that was easy. You just handed in your weapon, and then the arms guy issued me a guitar, and then I'm like, okay, I'll see you. Well, an M4 and a Gibson 280 both have working ends, so they, it was where you point it and what you do with it. But yeah, I love that you remember that. That was
oh man, I'll never forget it.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I do remember singing Johnny Be Good, because you'd run around thinking about songs that were in that 4/4 cadence, like I get tired of singing about a C-130.
I was thinking about trying not to cough up a lung over the next mile.
Oh no, you were the guy making people cough up.
Yeah.
Don't be bashful about that one.
Well,
just in case anybody doesn't know, there were like 3 guys in the Ranger Battalion that could run like sub 5-minute miles. And Doug Bourne was one of them, and Jeff was one of them. And there was that other kid from Charlie Company that could just, he was like collegiate level.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to see Jeff Struker get out there and lead the company run because you were too fast.
Well, I've slowed down
Slow down,
considerably.
Sergeant Struker.
Right? Yeah.